Hi everybody, I'm here with Precise Planting, and I'm going to ask Sylvan Chez's question to Bryce Baker, who works for
Precision Planting.
Precision Planting. Okay, so the question that Sylvan asked was, what is the general opinion on balancing profit and sustainability? Have groups of farmers split off in support of one or the other? Is there pressure among your peers and social groups that influence you and perhaps make a decision that you disagree with? How are small farmers, or maybe perhaps large farmers, affected by large corporations? So, Bryce.
All right, yeah. Hey, that's a great question. A lot there. I'll speak to a lot of those points. So, farming is very communal, I would say. So, is there pressure? There is pressure to adopt certain practices, but it's not necessarily pressure to do things that someone doesn't want to do. One of the misconceptions that a lot of people that aren't real familiar with farming have is that farmers don't care that much about the land. So to the question, farmers have been caring about sustainability for a long time, like legacy, and because of the nature of ground ownership, handing down farmland to the next generation to farm is really important.
Which is probably pretty common.
Which is very common because, through the generation passes it down, and you have, there's a lot of, where I'm from in Illinois, there's programs for bicentennial farms, or it's 150 years that this farm has been in one family.
Wow.
Type thing. So farmers care a ton about the land, but need to balance profitability with sustainability. So a practice that is super environmentally friendly but has such a tremendous cost that a farm's going to lose money. A farm is run just like a business. Consumers may not look at it that way because it's producing food. The reality is a farmer has to make money just like any business. If somebody was running a restaurant and the production of their food costs more than the money they brought in selling the food to their customers, they would go out of business. And so the farmer has to balance those things. So as you think about some of the practices, like farmers have been doing sustainable practices and implementing them more and more. And there are different groups. There are some groups that are like, hey, cover crops are the way to go. Or hey, no-till is the way to go. And other people say, well, full tillage is the way to go. But they're all doing it for a different reason. Like no-till is really important where you have hillsides that are being farmed so you don't get erosion. If you have a whole field and it varies by that much, a foot of elevation, you don't necessarily need to utilize no-till in that. You can do some tillage. So this is a planter row unit. And so one of the things that is becoming a very much more adopted practice when it comes to fertility is great because it's a sustainable practice and it's a profitable practice for the farm. And that is, a lot of farmers in the past would just take fertilizer, kind of like people that fertilize their yard, just spread granular fertilizer on top of the soil. And sometimes that can wash off if it's a slope. Sometimes that can volatilize, which is just it kind of evaporates into the air. And so and also crops are typically planted in rows. So corn in the Midwest of the U.S. is typically planted 30 inches apart. So you can see here these streams of water coming out of here and out of here. What that's representing is liquid fertilizer. So the practice that a lot of farmers are adopting is instead of just spreading granules of dry fertilizer on top of the soil, is as they're planting, a seed is being planted in a row right here. It's called banding, but it's putting fertilizer on both sides of the row. This is putting it real close to the seed. This is about 3 inches away from the seed, and it's just putting the fertilizer in the soil so it doesn't run off and doesn't volatilize into the air, but it's putting it right where the plant's going to grow and take it up. So this actually allows a reduction in fertilizer usage. It allows less runoff, but the kicker is it allows the farmer to use less fertilizer, which costs them less and makes them more profitable. All right, so that's a highly sustainable practice that balances both profitability and sustainability.
How much does something like this cost, though, in terms of what the farmer has to pay out?
Yeah, so like this little device right here is about $300 per planter row unit, and the planter usually has 12, 16, or 24 of these, so it'd be 300 times, 16 rows. And then they might have to plumb up some hoses and stuff, which would be additional costs. But in the end, if they're able to reduce their fertilizer volume that's used, or make it equivalent and increase yield, it's a profitability center for them.
So when you think about what's going on in the Ukraine right now, and the cost of energy and the cost of fertilizer, something like this could actually save them a lot of money?
Bingo. There's a lot of effort being put in right now in the ag industry to soil sampling. So this is one thing that is unique. Sometimes I just use the lawn example because I think it can resonate with some folks off the farm. But you go out and maybe spread fertilizer on a yard to make sure the grass is growing well and is green. Well, before a farmer spreads fertilizer, they go out and they soil test many places throughout a field, and they look at how much nitrogen is in the soil, how much phosphorus, how much potassium, and then they apply based on what the need is for the crop and what's already in the soil. So they don't just say, well, I'm going to put 4 applications on from, wherever I got my fertilizer. They actually say, okay, well, I need this much nitrogen, this much phosphorus, this much, and it's utilized throughout the crop year this way, so I'm going to put it on 3 different times at different rates.
Right.
So with that, then, the combination of soil testing and only applying what's needed, as well as banding fertilizer, which allows for the fertilizer to be more efficient, this is definitely going to be a big opportunity for farmers to reduce costs but still produce enough grain to be profitable and to produce the food that we need.
Sure. And on the environmental level, would something like this completely eliminate runoff of nitrogen and prevent eutrophication?
So it may not 100% eliminate, depending on how much rainfall there is and if there's like a flood or something.
Right.
But this is definitely going to drastically reduce. So let's look at the difference here. If on the same day, I drop granules of fertilizer on top of the soil and we get a large rain and that runs off, the soil and some granules are going with the water. If this is placed an inch deep and we get that rain and there's runoff on top, well, this is not running off because it's in the soil. And actually, soil science is so cool. Okay, so they're actually negatively and positively charged particles.
Right,
between...
cation exchange and capacity.
Yeah, bingo. So the CECs of the soil actually determine how much fertilizer, how much nitrogen that those clay particles can hold.
Right.
And so if a farmer is applying just what it can hold, they actually become adhered to the soil. And if the soil stays, it's not going anywhere.
And does your technology also, as it's going through the field, can it analyze pH? Can it analyze, or does the farmer have to go separately and make another trip, which increases the labor?
Yeah, so we do have a tool. It's not on this row unit. We can get a picture of it so you can show the students. But it's called a smart firmer. And so the planter creates a trench. This is larger, but about 2 inches deep, and puts the seed down in the bottom. So there's a tool that just runs in the trench and it pushes the seeds into the soil so they have good seed to soil contact, but then it's also it's not measuring soil characteristics right now other than organic matter. So it wouldn't replace soil tests, but it's, if I have an 80-acre field, the soils vary. So what the smart firmer can do is allow a farmer to see where the variability is, so they can treat the different areas of the field differently. I mean, that's what precision ag is.
Right.
Is if 5 acres are different than these 10 acres, than these 20 acres, well, treat them each differently, give them what they need.
And can there be a lot of variability within an acre, or is it really?
Yeah, within an acre there can be. Generally, it's sub-field, so it's a group of acres, but there can be within an acre. It just depends on the field and how that soil formed in that spot.
And I have a more difficult question, and my students I know would ask this question. When you think about climate change and the changes due to, as a result of climate, is this technology in any way addressing any of that, or is that a separate issue?
So what I would say to that is there's not like a direct carbon sequestration or anything that Precision Plantings products address with the ones we have now. But what we offer is the ability for every seed that's planted and the data that comes off, every seed to produce well. So as you think about it, plants are consuming carbon, right? Carbon dioxide. So if we have every seed that's planted produces a full uniform plant, then there's more carbon dioxide being taken in by those plants. And so that's what our products here are working on is making sure every single seed, millions of them per field,
Right.
they get planted, grow well, germinate consistently, and then are able to produce, essentially take carbon and sunlight and produce food. So corn
Okay.
plants, soybean plants are really some cool, cool plants. So,
yeah.
so it does help in the carbon sequestration. It's not necessarily what you hear a lot of times in the media and so on, but it definitely
Right.
does help.
It's like sneaky carbon
Yeah.
sequestration. Yeah, it's very cool.
And so just one note I'll make about sustainability that's not necessarily environmental, but it has a link, is at this show there's a ton of equipment manufacturers, and they make new equipment, and that equipment is really expensive. It takes a lot of money
Yeah.
to farm. But one of the cool things about precision planting, our company, is we make what we call retrofit pieces. So you can go buy a new piece of equipment, and there's a combine down here, costs $1.1 million new. Okay, there's a planter that's $400,000. But we make pieces that if you already own the piece of equipment, you already own a planter, let's say, but there's some new technologies that are out there, but you can add just this technology or this depth control or this fertilizer control to what you already own for, let's say, I don't know, $800 a row times 12. So this would be maybe $10,000, and you can get that piece. Now you could also buy a new $400,000 planter and have something similar, but it allows a lot more farmers to be accessible to the newer technologies that do help the environment, rather than having to go buy a whole new planter. So farmers that can afford the larger, newer pieces of equipment can buy that and get the technologies, but what this allows is for people who don't have the capacity to buy the really expensive new equipment, they can add technologies on what they have already.
So can you add this to, let's say, a combine that's 20 years old, or is it?
Yep, so if you had a 20-year-old machine, you could put most all of this on there. And you know, a lot of farmers say with the products that they buy from us to retrofit, they say, I spent more on the products I added than the machine was worth before I added it.
Right.
Like, okay, but the machine was still in good shape, and now you're doing a better job. You're applying fertilizer in a better way. You're setting the soil in a better way for the seeds to germinate and emerge.
Wow, that's well. Thank you very much. That was a lot of information, and I'm going to test some of you on what was just said. That was really excellent. Thank you very much.
You got it.
That was